Okay, welcome to a special edition of Cowboy Shit, the podcast. My name's Ted Stoven. He is Dustin Edwards. And with us today, I guess I'm not even actually sure what your official title is anymore with the Canadian Pro Rodeo Association, Jeff, but former general manager. And I think today you were telling me glorified volunteer of sorts.
Yeah, I think they use the official term CFR liaison, but I don't know exactly what that means, but we're going with it anyway.
Yeah. So welcome to the show, Jeff Robson. Jeff, you've been on before at least once or twice now. This is number 3. Man, there's only I think there's only 2 other people that have been on 3 times so far, and it is Keenan Vine and Cor Blund.
I'm not surprised at either of those guys, to be honest.
Yeah.
Keenan forced his way onto a couple extra shows.
I was just talking to him on my way here, and he's like, well, if you're going to Ted's house, I know what you're doing.
Now he'll be wanting number 4 so he can up you.
Get back on the top of the leaderboard. But big news today, Jeff. The Canadian Pro Rodeo Association and partners in Edmonton. Just tell us what's happening here. What's the big news?
Yeah, I guess the big news is CFR50 in 2024 will be in Edmonton at Rogers Place. It's a big announcement, and we're pretty excited about it.
Last week we had a big announcement on the show too. Dustin and Allie got engaged.
I think the CFR one's a little.
I think that's probably way more important.
And
congratulations, by the way.
Thank you, Jeff. And congratulations on.
I didn't get to tell you that in person, so.
And congratulations on this big announcement, because this is big news. There's been lots of discussion over the past. I would say probably longer than a year on what the future of the CFR was. So for you guys, this has got to be pretty nice to get it over the finish line.
Yeah, when the board decided that or I guess I decided, I'm not sure which, but we decided to bring in replace me as the general manager. One of the things that I said I would be interested in trying to help out is to try and finalize the contract for the CFR, and I think it made sense for lots of reasons. One, I think I know all the players, so that a lot of that groundwork had already been laid, and for a new guy to come in and try and get up to speed on where all those discussions are at, it probably a bit difficult for him to have some success. So yeah, I think it was a good opportunity for me to carry that on, and yeah, here we are today. And
so let's kind of talk about the kind of the high level stuff here. What is how long is he going to be here? What does it look like? Kind of dates and everything that would have been part of the announcement today.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of moving parts in those, in the term and the timing, and so let's start with the dates. The Oilers Entertainment Group, was going to have a situation where they were going to rent the building to Explore Edmonton, which would be our primary partner. There's a bunch of other partners we'll get to in a few minutes, but they wanted us to be in and out of there before their regular season started, and so that was something we had to give a lot of consideration to, because there's a lot of committees that are impacted, and for us to be able to turn around from the end of the rodeo season to try and get to CFR, we like to have a month. A month is a comfortable time to get jackets, all the stuff, ordered numbers, back numbers, stock numbers. Like, there's a lot of moving parts there. Verify earnings, all those things. So to move it up, 3 or 4 weeks is a big endeavor for us. And we didn't take that decision lightly. There's a lot of moving parts around that decision, but I think there's a lot of positives to it too. Having it in almost a time of year where we're not going to have snowstorms.
Hopefully not.
Yeah. We're going to have, we can do some outdoor activations, which I think could be interesting. when I was on the CFR commission, going way back, geez, dating myself.
But up until like 2015? No. Yeah, probably 2015 would have been when you were on the commission until, or 2014, or what would have been?
Yeah, well, I think I started on the commission in 2012.
Okay.
But, we talked about moving the dates up so we avoided some of the nastier weather. And we'd always had a lot of pushback around, need to align with farm fair, need to align with, farmers make sure we're out of the field, the rural community. And so I think it's going to be a big test for us to see whether we can pull off a major event like this earlier. Hopefully we can engage a whole new audience as well, not just obviously our loyal diehard fans, but we want to engage a whole new set of, whole new generation of people that love rodeo as much as we all love rodeo. And so I think there's a whole lot of positives around moving it up. I think, 3-year term, we wanted to, test the water on this new timing. This will tell us a lot, but it was, kind of a long enough term. I think we could get a good snapshot of it, but a short enough term that, if we need to make a change or something needs to happen, I think we can do that. And then I think the other interesting part about it is, a window of opportunity that they gave us for the building was really lends itself to end on a Saturday night. And so
really?
We're gonna start on a Wednesday and we're gonna end on a Saturday night, and so we'll have a perf Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, 2 on Saturday, and I think that there's a lot of pros and cons to it. I mean, Vegas did it. Vegas stopped on a Saturday night. Leads up to a big party at the end. So I think there's some pros and cons to it for sure. But I think the pros outweigh the cons.
And so 5 performances rather than 6. So we're down one. We're down one performance from the traditional CFR format, which has been that way for a long time.
As long as I can remember.
And folks in rodeo are reluctant to change, just like a lot of people we know, right? Like, but that's so. I guess that takes me to my next question, though, of like prize money similarities. I don't know what the exact specifics are, but we can talk about that a little bit, and then like what the other proposals looked like, and just kind of a few points that way.
I think basically the prize money will generally speaking be the same, but it'll be split up over 5 performances instead of 6. So you can win more in each performance. We can get out of the building. That's really what they're after. And there's some other performance parts of our contract that I think allow us to start to think about rodeo differently. I really think that's, we started it way back with, also keep dating myself. Maybe I'm hanging around too long. But there's a number of years ago where we started this, the digital world where we had Flow Sports and now we're obviously onto the Cowboy Channel, and we couldn't be happier with how this is unfolding. But one of the things that I said at that time, sitting in a steakhouse in Calgary, I spent 2 nights with the Flow Sports people and really started to share a vision for how we thought rodeo could really start to flourish. And the thesis around that was, if we could get enough money for our digital rights, we could start to put money back into our rodeos communities. And, it was a gamble, I guess, at the time, sort of. But at the time we had 8 tour events, and we fluctuated, pre-COVID from 8 to 11. But this past year, we've had 16 tour events. And I think that's a testament to the thesis that we thought about, we started with. We have SMS Equipment as our title sponsor of our tour. Obviously, the money that we get from the digital streaming, we pour that back into our communities. There's money that, that the CFR contract always allows us for, we've called that initiative Harder Rodeo. That money now goes back to every community, not just tour events. I had a guy at one of the committee meetings years ago say, you guys aren't really doing anything for us. And it really struck a chord with me that said, hey, how do we do things instead of just being the overarching rules guys and, the one that everybody goes, well, you're really expensive to have a CPRA rodeo. How do we start to give money back where people go, hey, this is starting to make sense? And it's clear it's happening. We had more rodeos this year than we've had in a long time, not just tour events, but more rodeos. We have more membership this year. Our membership is way up this year. We've never had this kind of membership. So
How many people? I don't even know.
I think it was almost 1,100 members, I think, this
wow.
year. So, a big part of that is going to be, let's make no mistake, a big part of that is breakaway roping. I think that's been a huge add for us. And we wanted to include the breakaway ropers to some degree in our proposal and how we move forward. I didn't want them to go through all the same heartaches the team ropers had to go through and the barrel racers had to go through.
Which you were part of.
I was
right?
very big a part of all of that.
Yeah.
And how do we continue to grow our sport and do a good job of it, and not tax our communities so much. So these bonuses that we could receive could go on to really bolster a big tour event. They could bolster our Maple Leaf Circuit Finals. So some of these things I think could really be a big thing for us as an organization as we move forward.
I got to go to the tour rodeo point though, and I got to ask the question. It's been an $8,000 threshold for a long time, and I'm just thinking like, what's the plan on that increasing, or is there a different threshold? Because there might be more, but just with the way that money works, we should have a lot more. We should have a lot higher prize money at a lot more places where, not to single one place out, but like some rodeos still pay the same amount of prize money now as they did 25 years ago.
Yeah, and I think there's a lot of reasons for that. I mean, other costs have gone up. People costs, stock costs, personnel. I mean, I'm sitting here with two contractors right now. I got to be really careful
yeah,
what
you
I
got to
say.
watch your words here.
But-
Jeff.
but-
We're not stock contractors.
Yeah.
No, but
These rodeos having two announcers and a good sound guy.
Right?
I mean,
so like all those things start to add into the costs, and so I don't know that I'm that upset about a rodeo that adds $8,000, gives us a chance for tour points and tour events, and that's a big commitment from a volunteer committee standpoint. And if you look across the board this year, I was actually telling this to somebody else the other day. I said, if you just looked at the standings today of what it took to make the Canadian finals in 2023, and you looked at what it took in let's go back to 2015 or 20, even I think the last time I went was 2012. If you looked back at what it took in 2012 versus what it took in 2023, you'd be shocked. It's almost double. The bottom spots are almost
really?
double.
Oh, wow.
So, like, not the top spots. The top spots are flourishing too, but the bottom spots, like to make the team roping finals, I think this year you had to make well over 20,000.
Yeah.
And the last year I think I had made 16,000.
Oh, really?
So,
and
like,
what spot were you in when you made it?
I think I was like 8th maybe or
Oh,
9th.
really?
So it was
like 12 or so was the lower end.
Yeah. So it's changed dramatically, and
equal money in the team roping makes it more dramatic too.
but there's not equal money everywhere.
True, but there's more places that have it.
Panoka this year was a huge step. Like
Yeah,
Lyle Kurtz at CVS Controls, like that was a huge kudo to him.
Yeah, he sponsored that and the tie down, I think.
Well, I don't know what all he sponsored there, but
Yeah.
I'm telling you, like that, like just stepping up and making that commitment was, and it showed in the quality of the team ropers that we got this year competing at the rodeo.
And that's big for those guys trying to get to the NFR as well, our Canadian guys trying to make a run at it.
Dawson Dillon almost make it.
Yeah,
The
and they
Graham
will.
brothers at some point. Yeah,
I think there was one year that Levi Simpson ended up like 16th or something, and they had not equal money in Panoka. If they had equal money in Panoka, he would have made it easy. Yeah. And I think
that's too bad.
I think that's a real I think fantastic that Lyle stepped up and did that. And obviously he's a massive supporter of the rodeo, and the world needs our world needs like those kinds of people, right? To step up, but yeah, it's pretty cool.
So back to CFR chat, and obviously, so a few less perfs.
One less.
just
One less perf, I
Not
guess.
a few.
Yeah, not
Not
a
a
few.
few,
One
just
less. What is kind of the turnaround time for getting into the building and getting out? Because we're going to be there Wednesday to Saturday. You obviously have a little bit bigger of a
4 day
window,
stretch.
So what is that in and what is that out? The hard out.
Yeah, I think we haven't got into that too much, but I think there's with Red Deer we always had lots of time to maneuver, and I don't think we're going to have that same kind of timing. Like we're going to have to be in, and we're going to have to get out. So I don't know. I think we'll have a 2-day session to get in, probably 1 day to get out, and like those are big. Those are fast turnarounds, and you would know this from being in the event world. Those are fast turnarounds with dirt and all the things that dirt brings, and so to get that ready, and so I think, it was a tough ask, but I think it's possible.
Can we chat about the stakeholders that are part of this? Bringing this
and
CFR?
before that, let's talk actual dates too. For those that might have missed it, just tell us the actual dates on when it's going to be there. It sounds like October, but I haven't actually seen the dates yet.
Yeah, I think I've had so many dates in my brain the last few days, but I think the first year is October 2nd through 5th.
Okay.
I think those are the dates, but whatever the Wednesday through
Saturday is that weekend.
I think it's 2nd through 5th.
And you were referencing hockey, so anyone that's listening that's not familiar, the NHL generally kicks off that kind of 13th to 15th week of October generally is when the NHL is going, right? So
yeah, and I think they wanted to have the building ready for their homestand, and so that's fine, and let's I think it's up to us now to put on a fantastic show and show them how good a job we can do in that building.
So kind of first week of October, let's go back and talk about the people. It is the 2nd to the 5th,
just for the record. Yeah,
okay. That brought it here, and not only the people that brought it here, but maybe some of the relationships that were already kind of established that helped the partnership.
Yeah, so obviously our big supporter there is Explore Edmonton. Explore Edmonton is largely backed by the Destination Marketing Fund in Edmonton, and the city's obviously city manager was in all those conversations. And what I think other people don't always understand or appreciate is how long this process takes. People go, oh, well, you just go and negotiate a quick deal. Well, there's a lot of things to discuss, and obviously you're working multiple angles at the same time. And we had 3 really great venues to have an option for this event, and Red Deer has been a great home for us, and Central Alberta has been always welcomed us with open arms, and we can't thank Red Deer and Westerner Park and the city, the county. People in Red Deer have done an amazing job of and they couldn't have lived through a worse time. COVID. Last year was probably the worst snowstorm in CFR history. I remember some doozies in Edmonton when I was there, but that one was almost
to kick it off.
That was the first day.
Yeah, what a kick in the pants, right? So, you can't give them enough credit. But the big stakeholders, in Edmonton would be, Explore Edmonton is, their whole objective is to bring economic development to an economic impact into the city, and they understand what the economic impact is. Explore Edmonton also, took over some of the assets from the old Northlands. So they would run K-Days as well. And so, it's been really exciting to see how, that dynamic is and how badly they wanted it and how they've worked hard to work with, the Oilers Entertainment Group to try and bring this to life. And just the people, as we've had multiple meetings in Edmonton over the course of the last year, and every time we go, it's just people are beaming from year to year with the thought process of us coming back, and so trying to get a deal done has been, obviously it's been a big deal.
Well, and you even from the previous offer, because there was an offer in 2015, is it, from the Oilers group to put on the CFR? Like that was one of the original continuations, and then that's when things went, kind of awry, and then the CFR ended up in Red Deer. That was kind of like the decline of the offer in Edmonton previously by the board and management at that time. You had finished before that with the CPRA and your previous general manager position then, but like you had still kind of kept in contact with the people, and you knew the key players, and a rodeo came back to Edmonton in 2018 and 19, I forget now. But they
last
had,
year there was in 2017. So.
Well, but I mean the fall rodeo.
Oh yeah, the fall rodeo.
Because that was one that came back. It was a totally new rodeo.
Yeah,
there was a tour rodeo that came back. Yep. So like there was always like you personally had always kept in contact with the Oilers and with the people in Edmonton. Like it wasn't like you still kind of had talked to the folks. That's kind of what my point is that you might not have been in the role in the couple years when the one deal got declined, but then you were instrumental in helping negotiate the deal for the CFR to go to Red Deer, and now you're part of it going back to Edmonton.
Yeah, I think it was interesting. One of the very first meetings we had, where I think OEG was in the room, the Oilers Entertainment Group. Stu Ballantyne's been a pretty good ally for us, and
he was Aquila at one point, or has he always been?
No, he's been Oilers
OEG forever.
Yeah, he was. He's been in that system for a long time, but I think he's their chief operating officer and president now. But
And he was a CFR guy previously too, right?
he's definitely been around us a long time. So
Yeah.
one of the comments he made it early when we were discussing it was, "Hey, this building was made for rodeo." I said, "Do you have any idea how many times Keenan Vine and I drove up to Edmonton to help with the design of this building?"
Well, and
to
Donnie
make
Joe was a consultant
Yeah.
to OEG for years to build that thing for.
Well, the
rodeo.
three of us, Donnie
Yeah.
Joe probably lesser,
Yeah.
in certain events, but there was certainly a big period of time there where the three of us were at lots of meetings around. If you look at their hallways where the dressing rooms are, those things are 12 feet wide and 10 feet high.
Yeah.
Well, you can ride a horse and push cattle down there, and,
Yeah,
and there's a
through the
reason for
hallways.
that. Like those
Yeah.
are massive hallways, and people go, "Geez, these hallways are really big." Well,
Yeah.
there's a lot of thought process put into trying to make this event great in Edmonton, and it.
There's two hallways that are almost that wide there. Wow.
It certainly broke my heart. In 2015 when things started to go off the rails with the Oilers group at that time, and hey, can't saw sawdust, like that's behind us and let's move on. But hey, the guys that were in charge at that time thought there was a better path, and that's all great. But here we are, and we're working towards bringing this big thing back, and now the job at hand is to rally the corporate citizens, rally the city, rally everybody, and go, hey, listen, we need your support, and we need this to go big for lots of reasons, and if we can all demonstrate that we're going to put our best foot forward, I think that there could be possibly a longer term situation there.
Now, normally when the CFR was in Edmonton, of course, there was the other events going on that would help support it and bring the people in. And is that something that Explore Edmonton or that group is going to look at doing, or are they thinking that CFR can be a standalone event now?
No, it's clear that Explore Edmonton's whole motive is, you guys look after what happens in the building, and we're going to do our best to bring activations to the outside of the building and what's happening around the city, and their level of excitement right now around those ancillary events is, like they got lots of great ideas, and let's see how it goes. But yeah, no, there's no question. We don't line up with Farm Fair. That's not a secret, but I think there's some things that they have their eyes set on that I think could really bring a great 4-day party to downtown Edmonton, to the Ice District, and let's get behind it.
Being able to have the Ice District area for activations is going to be pretty huge. Like you can have concerts out there, and you can have a whole beer gardens, and like just the other day we bucked some bulls out there. Like there's like enough space to do some pretty major activations, and having it like at this time of year, I think it's going to be beneficial for the like bucking stock and for all the horses that are there. Like I think that's a pretty cool, kind of silver lining here, that to have that different date and try it out. And we're going back, and the next 50 years of CFR, what does it look like? These first three, this is what the deal is for 50, 51, 52. But having those, like having that different date and having those, like the logistics though are still, there's a lot of hurdles to get across. We can probably talk about that a little bit too.
Yeah, obviously we're not at Northlands Coliseum anymore. We had not only we had Northlands, we had Northlands had across the road. They had stockyards. They had a lot of different moving parts there too, like barns. And
does any of that still exist or no? Like
some of it still exists.
Yeah.
So there's
we'll be able to use some of that, I would imagine.
There's probably an opportunity there. We're going to have to be a little more creative around, where we're going to house all this stock and what we're going to do with it, and, how much we truck in and how much we truck out and how much we stable there. But you're right, Ted. I think, you can walk out of the building and have some cool activations out in the Ice District. And I think
Ford Hall too.
Yeah, Ford Hall is massive, right? I mean, there's quite a few opportunities, and, I don't know. When we moved to Red Deer, you thought, oh, well, the sky's falling and everything's terrible. And, it turned out to be pretty good there. And
pretty great there.
Yeah.
I thought last year that Red Deer really found its stride, and it really felt like a significant event there. I mean, this winter storm to start the wheat, a lot of people didn't make it in. But I thought by Saturday last year in Red Deer, it really felt like, the there was some really good things happening there. And
Yeah,
they
no,
did a lot of work.
They did a lot of work, and and rebounded really well, and they've been a great partner. Like I just can't say that enough. Like they've done a great job of, when I'd say the first management group that was in there, weren't as keen on listening to some of our suggestions, which is interesting. But I think this group is, in the way we've kind of taken what we learned when we moved and applied that to our new contract, so that we can have maybe a little tighter hand on how that might go, and the suggestions and how we agree on things. And I think this feels a lot more like at the end of the Red Deer relationship, where guys like Mike Olson and Chloe and we're so great in Red Deer, and I feel like we're going to have that right away. And yeah, it should be a great experience.
What I want to ask was the actual structure of the agreement, and I don't know what you can say or want to say, but like, is there any risk on the side of the CPRA? Like, who's taking on the risk of this event, and who's kind of like footing where's the budgeting coming from? Like in Red Deer, Westerner Park put the bid in, and they ran the event. There was a lot of collaboration across the sides, but this is a whole new deal. I'm just kind of curious what the structure of the deal looks like, if you can even talk about it.
Yeah, well, let's start with Red Deer, because I think when we moved to Red Deer, you had a situation where they, we asked for a lot of things, and they gave us everything, and then some of that stuff was not able to be possible, right? So you got better management. Like, we went through 4 CEOs while we were there in 6 years, and so as we got to Mike Olson, and our relationship with Mike was, he's like, you guys are the experts. Why aren't we leaning on you to try and figure this out? I'm like, we're happy to help. We just never been invited to the party. So, now, we're in a situation where, as we've formulated the new contract, I think we've taken what we've learned and said, hey, we need to be a part of this. We need to have a little bit more hands-on. We need to be sure that, we're helping control the things that we can control. And so, I think that'll help it a lot. And I think it's a recipe for success. And yeah, I think nobody is, so in terms of the stakeholder, our deal is with Explore Edmonton, and, there's really, I guess there's really no downside for us, in terms of risk. But the risk would be, the event doesn't go well. I mean, I guess that's the risk. So, we're pretty committed to making sure this event goes well, and in this short-term contract, and then, our anticipation would be, let's pivot from there, right? But the work has just begun again. It'll begin in terms of planning, but it'll also, in behind the scenes, you got to, this looking forward never sleeps. You have to keep looking forward and knowing what your options are. And so I think, that's what I've been able to bring to this is, get out of the day-to-day rodeo business, and, having Denny come in and really, manage the day-to-day side of the business and keep me focused on, what's happening in the future. I think it's a healthier place to reside, because you can say, I'm not fielding calls from people that are upset about something that happened today. I'm taking calls with excited people thinking about what's going to happen in a couple of years, and how we might make that go. And so, that part of the business, I really do, I like.
Can you speak to what the relationship will be with the Oilers Entertainment Group on this? Is it more of right now just you guys are basically a tenant in the building at that time, or what does that side of it look like with them?
Yeah, I mean, I think it'll have to evolve, Dustin. Obviously they have state-of-the-art technology in this building. They have access to, cameras and things that, most buildings didn't just build in, and they built it all. Like, they obviously, they have like a screen that's, most people would die to have, right? Yeah. So, they, like, the technology that they put in there is second to none. And so, we're going to have to navigate and figure out how that relationship works. But, the meetings we've had so far is, they're keen to help us try and figure out what that is and what involvement they need to have. But largely, I would say it is a tenant agreement at the moment. But I think we're going to woo them over time. Like, I think they're going to understand that, we're pretty good guys, and we know what we're doing, and we were there to help and try and make the event better. And if it's better for them, it's got to be better for us. So yeah, I think it's that part of the relationship I think will have to evolve.
I got to go back to how you're talking about working on the forward vision of the CPRA and working with Denny, and he took over the position you previously held. But like, you're actually volunteering for all this? Like, is that the case? Like, what's the why for you, Jeff? Like, I wonder sometimes, like, what's your why in this whole scenario?
Yeah, you make it sound like it's a bad thing.
Well, I don't. I appreciate that you do it, but I wonder why sometimes.
Yeah,
I get deflated sometimes because I'm like, geez, like I don't think I can make a difference, and I appreciate that you're willing to go and put the time and effort in and do this as if like as a volunteer, like that's takes a lot of time and effort out of your life that you could be doing a lot of other things.
Yeah, I guess, I look at, my rodeo career and how much I enjoyed my time as a competitor and, the work that went in behind the scenes from people, in history. And, a great guy just recently passed named Len Perry, who was one of the very great visionaries of the CFR in Edmonton. And, people didn't talk about how much Len got paid. When he passed, they talked about how much he gave back. And I think, for me, that's, the old adage, you want to leave things better than you found them. And, I see so much potential coming in our rodeos. Like, I wasn't a rough stock guy, but you see, 6 saddle broncos, we could have 12 saddle bronc riders at the NFR this year. We could have, there's 2 bow riders. We could probably have 6, our steer wrestlers are deep. Our team ropers are coming on. Our tie down ropers. Bo Cooper's going. See these kids coming along. And one of my motivations, was there was a picture of the shoots of Colton Schmidt and Kyle Lucas when they were little kids. And I think when I took over as the director of the tie down or the team roping guys at that time, I always thought, how could I make it so good for those guys someday that they could actually try and make a living trying to do what we all wanted to do and what we loved. And I say, that's my motivation. There's nothing else. I still run my own full-time business. I still coach hockey and do all the things I do. I volunteer on the Hockey Alberta board and, I do lots of things. But, every time I start thinking about, I probably should pass the baton and let somebody else do it. And when they ask, well, would you keep helping this? And, that was one of the things when Denny came along was, when I talked to Terry Cook and we had a breakfast one morning and I said, Terry, I think it's time. I think it's time I moved on from being the GM. And I think there's somebody that could have so much more energy in handling the day-to-day stuff. And the day-to-day stuff was never the stuff that really got me going. And anybody that knows me, that's probably true. I was probably cut and dried and, probably like that, where, you see how excited he gets, Denny gets about, handling situations and what gets him up in the morning and you see all the things that he's done already. I think he's done some really cool things. And you go, I didn't have the time nor the energy for it. So, but this I have a lot of time and energy for because, I think this means a lot to everybody and not having a CFR would be devastating. And so, that was, I think some of your best work always gets done when there's a thought process where this may not happen if somebody doesn't step up and do it. And I'm like, I think I need to step up and do it. And, if next week somebody says, hey, you need to move on. And, that happened in 2014. The board said, hey, you need to move on. And, we need to bring in a different guy. And, I didn't go out kicking and screaming. They said, hey, I'm happy to let that happen. And but when they called and said, could you come back and help us? I went, yeah, I would, obviously,
Well, was it the same people though? It wasn't. Well, it probably wasn't the same board that called you back.
But you every time I came back, it was always I was the team roping rep, and my term had been done. Somebody else had took that spot. They called me that summer and said, "Hey, could you come in and help us at the GM spot?" I said, "Sure, I'll help you in an interim." That was in I think 2012. I left there 2.5 years later.
Who was the GM before that? Was that Dale?
Pete Montana.
Oh, Pete. Oh, and then who was before Pete? Or was it Pipolo?
Well,
no, Pipolo was the rodeo administrator.
I think Dale took a stab at it. Jim Piplo was the GM and the rodeo administrator for a while, and I think we burnt the poor guy out.
Yeah, fair.
Like you just, those are
a
very
lot of-
different.
it's a lot of work.
Those are very different jobs, and
Yeah.
so I think there's, my motivation is probably not the same as lots of people's motivation. I don't have like any crazy, thought process around, this has to happen. I just try and keep looking forward and go, how do we keep making this better? And every time you make it better, you go, okay, this is we're actually making a step change here.
Yeah.
Can I ask on just going back to the CFR stuff, talking about going forward, and obviously this event is going to have the ability to sell way more tickets, way more
Capacity over 5
capacity
days.
is huge.
So you got 5 perfs at the capacity, I want to say, is like 17 something. It's like, what would it be, 120% of the capacity of what Westerner was? I don't know the stats, but it's like 7 to 17. Like there's a huge opportunity in potential.
Yeah, there's a huge revenue opportunity, and I think there's also an opportunity, from a corporate standpoint, like from corporate sponsorships and what's happening corporately. I think we can step up and do a better job there, and I think there's lots of opportunity there.
And I guess that's where I was going with. So you get more people in the seats. If you're activating, I think of things like, when the NHL had the awards in Vegas, they're activating, they're bringing new fans in. You obviously want to see the same thing happen at a nice time of the year, new fans in. What about the reach on the media side with this deal in Edmonton? Is there going to be some opportunity from a broadcast standpoint to grow this thing, or are you guys happy with where it's at with the Canadian finals and what that looks like?
Yeah, our broadcast situation is interesting because we're under contract. So I think in the long term there could be change there. We could branch out into the mainstream, linear TV type stuff. But if you look at the following on the Cowboy Channel, you look at the following we had on Flow Sports. I don't think we ever had that following when we tried to go mainstream, and those mainstreams always cost a lot. So, I think there's a partnership on the other side that understands what the value is and what we're doing, and I think we can grow that too. And their commitment, I guess we'll see this year, but I think their commitment too on how that's going to unfold, is going to be good too. We're committed to having a live broadcast, and obviously you've been a big part of that for a long time, and we like the live broadcast aspect of it, and I think our show is worthy of a live broadcast, and I think it's good.
There's a lot of great stories to tell too. I think when you get there, and I think that's an important part of it. So, I'm assuming as these years go on and as those relationships, continue to prosper, whether it's with the DMFs, so the destination marketing groups, or whatever it becomes with the Oilers group, I'm sure everybody's vision is just to keep growing this thing and making it the best it can be.
Yeah, I think if we were just looking at it in a silo of like, this is how big it could be, let's do the best we can with how big it could be. Red Deer was a great facility for us. If our goal was, to say, hey, is there a growth opportunity? Well, we're about to find out. I'm hopeful that growth opportunity exists. And, going back to some of my earlier comments about the thesis is, if that turns out to be as good as expected, man, there's just no end to what we could do with kind of some of that opportunity through this contract.
What are you most worried about, or what makes you nervous on going back to Edmonton? If anything, like you look at outside of the deal, though, this isn't your only deal of this magnitude. I'm assuming in not only rodeo, but on the business side of things. Like I don't know. We can talk about that side of things a little bit, but like you're experienced in these kinds of dealings, and I don't think a lot of people in rodeo are. And like, I'm just assuming. I don't know if there's many folks that are this involved with rodeo that do that, but like. Anyways, I wanted to get back to that question of like what,
the risk.
Yeah, well, like what are you worried about? What are you nervous about for it?
Yeah, I guess the moving it up, a month, and that there's some risk there in terms of some of our traditional rural communities might not, use the adage, it might be still in the field,
Might not be done quite yet.
Might not be done combining, and I mean, I remember being on the commission way back saying, hey, like, is there an opportunity for us to move this up so we could, be assured of some nicer weather? Because sometimes weather in Edmonton and, second or third week in November isn't spectacular.
The last CFR in Edmonton, that last Sunday, the very final perf, it was like minus 30. It was like minus 28 or something on the very last day.
But I remember going to Ruth Chris and freezing my ass off on my way there.
Yeah, and that is a factor.
On the other side, though, if it's that early in the year, are we going to still want to be golfing? Like, I wonder if people are going to like want to still be outside and not want to go inside to the show.
But
like,
I think that's an opportunity for an activation. Like, there's an opportunity for a golf tournament for the foundation, for the benevolent fund.
I think Dustin and I are going to get a team.
I think, like, you know what I mean? Like, I think there's other opportunities that we're not thinking about because we've been always pigeonholed in a certain time of year where we can't do outside activations. Now outside activations are a thing, and like there's just no telling what we could do if we really just step back and and that's where I say if you have the time, and I like to think that I had the time to sit back and think about these things. If you say if I have the time to think about what are the cool things we could do if the weather was a little nicer, I think you hit the nail on the head.
Well, look at what NHL teams do with these spring playoff parties when the weather's nice, and red lots, and what they do up in Edmonton, and I mean all over sports. I think hockey's a good example. Football, like when you can have those experiences outside of the venue in advance, it enhances that value for fans. And I'm a sucker for it. If there's something going on, I want to be there before. I want to tailgate. I want to go to the red lots. Man, I think that's super cool, and that could be fun with the CFR.
I could see like the tailgate party, like the full tailgate party out there before the rodeo. Especially on the Friday, Saturday perfs. But like you could have your whole broadcast, like your preview show out there in the square. Like there's a lot of like pretty fun stuff. You could even have outdoor concerts after the rodeo in that square that everybody could come to after with any sort of a band. Like anybody could perform there. You could have any kind of level of talent. Yeah, you could have like pretty crazy amounts of shows out there. I'm just thinking about it, but like
clearly I got you guys both very excited about this idea.
We're live production sports guys, so you know how that works. But that has got to be another avenue that, and I think Red Deer was obviously weather is a factor, so everything was indoors, but that route of the cabarets and the buckle presentations and things like that, that's important to these events because it's really a nice add-on.
Yeah, it's a great add-on. And, how do we, I don't know that we've ever found the secret sauce yet for those events. And I think, there's the outside activations. I think there's just no telling what we could do with it that could really make that cool.
Well, if you need me to do the buckle presentations outside in the square out there, I can get a bigger, thicker jacket if I need to, if it's cold out there. But
this is my buddy Ted. He always is self-proclaiming for his own good. If you need me.
Yeah.
Just if you need me.
Yeah. I wanted to go back just quick to Red Deer.
Okay. Go ahead.
I want to go back to Red Deer because if I recall, and I'm just going off recollection, when you guys first announced CFR in Red Deer, was it announced as a potential 10-year deal?
5 and 5.
5 and 5. So I guess what led us now to the deal being done and getting to Edmonton? I just wanted to touch on that just briefly.
Yeah. Well, if the podcast needs to be 2 hours long, I can make it that long.
I was just curious because I just remember like 10 was a big number when it first got announced.
I think there's a lot of misconceptions about that. So it was 2 5-year deals. And at the end of the first 5-year deal, there was an opportunity for Western Park to... So keep in mind, when we signed the first deal, it was Western Park and the Chamber of Commerce, and that changed over time. There was a number of changes to our contract as we moved through, so it was pretty fluid. And then, I think if you look at it and say, if I was Western Park, I think what the real message to the rest of the community in Red Deer was this can't be on Western Park shoulders. And so lots of people were confused when when the bidding process, when we asked for RFPs, Red Deer bid and they put in a good bid. But this time it came from the city of Red Deer, Red Deer County, and Western Park. So I think it's, there was a different vibe of the bid and certainly a different group of people we'd be dealing with. if we would have went ahead with Red Deer, we'd have activated a whole new group of people, a committee, whatever that would have been. So as much as I would say, Red Deer asked for termination there, Western Park did, not Red Deer. And then, so then if you fast forward and say, okay, when their bid came in and we were explaining the bid to the board, they're like, well, didn't they just kibosh this? Like, yeah, they did, but I think it was a good reset for them as a city, and even post decision on where we're moving to. I think that's the feedback too. Was we gotta rally around this, and we're not going away. And so I think that was, for me, that was really encouraging to say, hey, like when in 3 years' time, don't expect us not to be at the table, because we're going to be at the table, and I think that's really cool.
Does this open the door? I know if you look at, there's tour finals, there's Maple Leaf finals, they're all in great homes. We've seen different renditions. The grassroots finals was another. Does this still leave the door open for Red Deer to be partners with the CPRA on future events? Or,
absolutely.
Yeah. Because it was a great venue. They obviously saw some really good things there. So is that something you'd hope to see pro rodeo in some capacity in Red Deer?
Yeah, and I think that was the discussion that Mayor Johnson and I had the other day. Is this, it might be no today, but it's not no forever. It's not we don't want it. It's not that we don't want to be in Red Deer. We enjoyed our time there. They have a first class facility. You just can't knock the facility they have. Like, you could walk from the Centrium all the way around to that building, through all the exhibitions, through the cabaret, and never go outside. And like, they have a pretty cool setup there, I still think. And they a couple hundred stalls there. Like, they're built for equine events. They're built for ag related events. And so I think this next time around, it's going to be really fun thinking about what they might come with and how they're going to do it. And I think they're on the map now. And
having those kind of bids, and I know there's more than just the two we spoke of, it's got to be a nice little bit of an accountability for those who are hosting, just to essentially bring their A game, because there's a lot of good options out there now after going through a few years of some trials and figuring out where it would land. But there's some options for the CPRA. Yeah,
and I think CFR is a commodity, and it there was lots of discussion through this process around. Do we try and treat it like a Grey Cup? Do we try and, have it hosted in a different place every year? And, there's a lot of serious thought put into, could that work? But it seems to me like every time we start into those conversations, like whoever wants it seems to want it for a period of time, right? So, and I think it's the ancillary activations that drive that, and until we have our own ancillary activations, we probably don't get that. Like, if you go to Grey Cup in Calgary, like, there's Saskatchewan has their own tent and
different field houses.
Yeah, right. I mean, it's a completely different vibe, right?
Yeah, so I guess we'd have to go to like the Saddle Bronc Riders area and the Roper area.
I mean, and that's the thing about our sport that people just sometimes lose perspective of too. Is our sport is just different. We have 8 different events. And and 11 if you count the novice and the boys in the steer riding, right? So there's a lot of events, and we have a lot of masters that we're trying to make happy too, and so I think just along those lines, it's just not just your everyday kind of. It's not just a hockey game.
Yep. Well, speaking of the novice and the breakaway, I didn't even ask what those look like in this new deal in Edmonton. We didn't touch on that at all yet.
Yeah, no, it would be a similar format to how we have it now, and I mean, we haven't gone through all the details of that yet, but we're still trying to get through CFR49 yet, and I think those will be conversations we have right away in terms of how that works.
Is it thought that those guys will compete for their finale in the building at CFR?
Yeah, that's our thought. It's, at least at the moment, anyway.
Then as far as like trade shows go, if Farm Fair isn't in at the same time, if Farm Fair stays in November, where it traditionally has been, that means that if we're going to do a CFR trade show and those ancillary events that way, that's not going to be something put on by the CPRA. Those are going to be Explore Edmonton events that they're going to put together, but they're probably going to be at the Expo Center and in they're probably going to end up being over there when those are Explore Edmonton venues, essentially, is what I'm kind of trying to lead into.
Yeah, we really haven't got into
Don't know
those
yet.
details
Yeah.
yet, but I would say, don't count out Fort Hall. Don't count out.
Yeah.
There's a whole other practice facility in Rogers Place. Like, there's a lot
You're going
of
to need that for horses.
maybe
Yeah.
the nice time of year we can keep the horses outside.
I guess that's true, too.
So, like, there's a whole other building there that we could do all kinds of cool and amazing things in. So,
Really big beer gardens.
so like, right? Don't sell yourself short in terms
That's
of what
true,
the
too.
possibilities are. Right?
Especially October. I kind of forgot about that part. Though. But November was so traditionally like you had to have so much infrastructure in place on the stock side. And when you're at Northlands, you had the space to put the stock on the other side of the road over that way, and people could walk over from the trade show and farm fair. Like, it was such a different, it's me a totally unique setup that way. And what's going to happen all day? I don't know what people are going to like. There's a lot of opportunities and things that people could do. But
well, I think the
Makes
ice
me
district. You said it earlier. The ice district's going to lend itself to a bunch of stuff. I think Fort Hall could have activations. I think there could be activations in the practice facility. I think there could be
outside.
There's a
Their
lot
whole
of things
parking
that could
lot
happen,
outside,
right?
Too. They had a whole beer garden, or Oktoberfest kind of set up there when we were there last.
OEG has 11 acres surrounding that building, so I'm pretty
11
sure,
acres?
Big footprint there, yeah.
pretty sure that we can have a big footprint and figure it out.
Did you get a room deal with the JW yet?
If you're asking me if I have a room reservation at the JW,
Hopefully.
my wife does.
Your wife- Barb is on it.
Barb is on it.
I was looking at the Westin again because that was one of the best stops before.
Yeah, last night we were having dinner, and I said, if you're smart, you get on the JW and get a
Get a
room
room booked
reservation.
right now.
I'm excited for CFR wrap-ups at Ruth Chris again.
Oh man, you could
down
you
in the
got-
vault room.
You got all Sunday now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, we
Like
got all Sunday.
Dustin, there'll be never another night like that ever again in history. That was probably the biggest night of my life.
Okay, we gotta go a little bit on this. There's like something else I want to get to a little bit too, but like just the history. Like that event in Edmonton was there for 44 years, right? 44 editions of the Canadian Finals in Edmonton. Like it was started there. It lived most of its life there before it moved. Like there's the tradition and the memories and the heritage of the event. Like how much did that play into things, and how much did that come up with things with the Explore Edmonton group and the city? And I'm curious how much they missed it too, because there's a big hole in that economic center of Edmonton that was missing these last 5 years, that they're probably like, hey, like we actually do miss this, and the businesses miss this.
You don't know what you got till it's gone.
Till it's gone, yeah.
I think when so obviously we've spent a lot of time in all the centers that had bid proposals, and I think one of the things that's rings through to me anyway, as you think about it, is everywhere we went in Edmonton, people talked about history. They talked about what had been, they keep talking about, well, guys came in and bought their F-150s and they did this and they did that.
On their Ram trucks.
And all those things, right? So, I think all those are a really big, important piece of it. It's, the economic development or the economic impact in the city was definitely huge. And so, I don't think that's lost on the stakeholders. It's going to...
And when you talk about destination marketing funds, they all survive based on, people staying in hotels, right? That's kind of what, when you see a tourism levy on your hotel reservation when you check out,
12%.
That's how these outfits invest back in the communities. That's where they get their money, but that's how they build their money essentially, right? If I'm correct in that.
Yeah, 100%. Like they would be, I would say, one of the biggest drivers in us going back, and I don't see that being less this time for sure. I mean, they've always been a huge part of our existence there, and
it was like a $300,000 check at one point from the DMF, or maybe more. I forget what it was.
Yeah, I don't remember the
major
exact amount,
money.
but yeah, they've been a huge supporter for sure.
If you can say, like, just for people in a catch-all, like what does it cost to put on a rodeo or an event of this magnitude?
Can we
speak to that?
guess first, and you can tell us how off we are?
Yeah, let her rip.
What do you think, Dustin? You got a number?
I would say like one and a half.
You're way off.
Really?
It's like my guess is like all in if Explore Edmonton's putting a bid together. Like if that's the number we're looking at, like we're looking at the Explore number, like what the bids were. My guess would be like,
Is this including the prize money?
yeah, everything.
Okay, so yeah, then
Yeah. So try again.
I'm going to say 4.
And I think like 4.5 to 5.
Yeah, it's going to be from that $4.5 to $5 million to try and pull this all off with costs and activations, and obviously our part is a big part of that. But their part is huge. Like one of the things that really came to light in this in this particular piece is to have we view our portion as a host fee, and then our host fee covers jackets and prizes and prize money and stock and all our personnel costs, and and so that number, obviously we've had 3 or 4 years in Red Deer to hone that number and to figure out that number. And I think that we've done our best to try and make that number palatable in terms of where we're at. And but when we started talking through it, when they start rattling off the things that they're gonna put money into, you go, we're just a part of it. Like our part is a part of it, but to create those activations and you never get it right the first kick, right? Like, so in 24, if we get it right, I'd be shocked. There'll be things we go, oh, we should have done this and we should have done that. And all the best planning, and you can have some pretty smart people in the room, but, trying to get that all lined out is, I remember the first year we were going to Red Deer and everybody said, oh, we got to have live bands and we got to this. Well, they overshot their budget by a lot, right? And so
it's kind of a fail forward mentality. You gotta,
but
it costs you.
And at the time, I'm going, well, if I was you, I wouldn't do that.
But they didn't listen. Like it wasn't necessarily like part of the
plan. And you feel in a way you kind of feel bad because they're excited and they think they know best, but none of those guys are event guys, and so now being around this event for a long time, you kind of get to be an event guy, and you kind of go, well, I know what works and I know what doesn't work, and that's where I've always appreciated guys like Keenan too, right? You get to chat with him about, hey, this is what we're thinking about. This is, and he's like, oh, well, yeah, you should do that, but you should do that, put this spin on it, or, he's always got some stuff that's, a bit different thinking too, right? And so I think it always makes. Nobody's ever going to be right 100% of the time, but we definitely get a couple years to get a good run at it.
And speaking of Keenan, that leads me to the next part about the production.
Can I open another beer?
Yeah, I brought more
beer
for
break.
us.
Cowboy.
Yeah,
Beer break.
but I wanted to talk about the Keenan side of things in the production, because you mentioned the partnership and what the agreement looks like and what you're involved with, but the CPRA as an organization is a member-driven nonprofit in Canada, and the CPRA is not in the business of producing rodeos. You're in the business technically of conducting the administration, the governance. Yeah, like Storm says. So it's a to go into the production side is a bit of a different path, and like it's not part of the technically like what would be the business plan of the CPRA, but I've always thought that it probably should be a little bit more, and there could be like a CPRA production person at every high level rodeo to help with the show, because it's tough because you don't want to tell the committees what to do or what not to do because they're a volunteer committee that's put on the show. But that leads to a whole nother rabbit hole about like what the board of the CPRA is, what is right or wrong in that scenario. But anyways, like going back to Keenan, he's involved currently and working for Westerner under advice of the CPRA, or like
I'm looking for a word there.
He's another liaison.
Yeah,
production liaison.
Yeah, he's a paid liaison on the rodeo side. But anyways, like in Edmonton, there'd be more involvement with CPRA help in production. Like you guys have Tanner Gerlitz now as part of the office. He's done a lot of production, a lot of rodeos. He knows the difference on the stock contracting side. Just we got to talk about that a little bit too.
I mean, it's always been something our board's talked about, and you know, who covers that cost and how does that look and act, and you know, some committees take it upon themselves and try and figure out a way to work that into their budget. Obviously, you know, I think about new rodeos that we've added in the last couple of years, like Lethbridge has come back to us. And Mike Workington's done a great job with his event down in Lethbridge.
Former Northlands guy, and with some vision around how he wants to see this unfold. And you know, he didn't hesitate a second to, you know, make sure he brought Keenan in, and you know, everything from rodeo setup to working the ground to picking rocks to like whatever he does. And you know, I think
hiring good announcers,
baiting the shoots,
and hiring really average announcers. So yeah, no, I'm just kidding. I think
more average sound guys.
Yeah. But you
That's
know,
me,
I think he's taken it upon himself to say, "Hey, like, how do I make my rodeo, you know, really good?" And not, you know, Mike's a great guy, but he's not a rodeo guy. So he's like, "Hey, how do I fit this into my budget and make it work?" And I, you know, and obviously Keenan, you know, Keenan and he have a relationship to figure that out. And you know, I think that was one of the recommendations I had for Westerner Park was, you know, you don't have to be the jack of all trades. There's guys out there that can actually, you know, that do this for a living and figure out how to make it work. And why wouldn't you want that expertise? If I was putting on one, you know, and I've been around them a lot, like I still wouldn't be scared to bring somebody like that on and say, hey, this guy does, you know, when you have fantastic rodeo committees that have figured out how to make that work so well, you know, that's so awesome. I when committees that are volunteer committees pull that off, and you know, I think about rodeos like Pinoca that are just like truly like they're grade A, elite rodeos that have figured out how to make that work with their volunteers. I think that's so cool. But then there's other guys that, you know, pulling this off, going, hey, I'm not sure how to make this work. Well, why wouldn't you want to make it work? So I think adding that expertise in there is really key.
So is that kind of the plan going forward over the next 3 years with the Edmonton group on those kind of decisions and that kind of planning? Is that something that the CPRA will continue to kind of lead the foot forward? I know when it was in Edmonton before, there was a commission that helped in the hiring of different personnel and production side of it. So, you know, maybe that's, Ted, where some of your question was going, is what will that look like, and what will the CPRA's role versus Northland?
That's exactly
Northlands,
it. Yeah. So very similar to the way Red Deer was. We're gonna have a committee, and you know, that committee is
CFR committee.
Yeah, a CFR committee, and that committee is, you know, largely in charge of what happens in the dirt, and then, you know, if you go to the contract, you know, what the CPRA is responsible for in our host fee will be very similar to the way it's been the last few years. Yep. So lots of personnel are being hired by us, and you know, we're going to keep, you know, these are the things that we think we can have a lot of control of. And then, you know, there's other things that, you know, the building, you know, the people that are renting the building or own the building, you know, they know better than we do in terms of how to do certain things, right? So we've tried to divvy those things up and try and make that. And I think we've shown in Red Deer that it actually works better that way.
Yeah. And I think that you spoke to it earlier, and I say this having been working in the Saddle Dome the last couple months, but that building is going to...
Your guys' screen is the size of the bench monitor at Rogers.
We're getting a new building now. That's exciting. But that's got to lend itself to some pretty cool opportunities from the production side for that show. And I'm sure that was probably part of that conversation as well.
Yeah. No, I think, like I said before, like this, they have a state-of-the-art... The first time you ever see the control room in Rogers Place, you just go, like, you're gobsmacked. Like, there's more bells and whistles and buttons and screens. And, you know, I always remember the one that was in Northland's Place, you know, or Northland's Coliseum was at the bottom by the downstairs bar.
You could see it from the bar, right?
Yeah, that was from the
bar.
Yeah.
And it always looked pretty cool. Well, this one, like, rivals that. Like, it looks
10 times the size.
It looks like something in downtown New York you'd see at NBC or something.
They even have a camera inside the Jumbotron that's on this little like rig. Maybe there's even two of them, but you have like a full camera angle that's underneath the Jumbotron for another angle. It's like kind of like halfway is jib cam and halfway like RoboCam that you can run underneath of the scoreboard. The screens underneath the scoreboard at Rogers for the ice level people are almost bigger than the Saddle Domes right now.
Crazy.
Yeah, that's the difference.
That's crazy.
It's wild. Sorry
Is there,
to go on a
has there been any
tangent.
discussion on like ticket prices and things like that? Because I know
Oh, yeah.
that evolved a lot in Red Deer, and obviously
And
there's not as
six-pack
many
tickets.
seats. And yeah, like I guess is that part of this discussion?
These
yet,
would
or
be
is it
called
too early?
5-pack tickets.
Well, yeah,
Five
5-pack.
packs,
Yeah.
right.
I don't know what they're going to call it. You know, obviously there was a huge following in Edmonton previously that, you know, 6-pack ticket holders, some people pass them down from generation to generation. And
I'm cutting you off, but wasn't there at one point more 6-pack holders when the event came to Red Deer than even available seats in Red Deer?
yes, that's a fact.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, you know, I still see that's, you know, we haven't got into ticketing strategies yet. Ticketing strategies, obviously we're still trying to prepare for CFR49,
Yeah,
but,
can't sell tickets to an
yeah.
event that the other one hasn't
yeah,
finished yet.
Well, you can, but probably shouldn't.
yeah, but I see that, you know, there's, if you've been into an event in Rogers Place, it's a pretty cool venue. You know, I think the thing that's probably different this time around is the ticket revenue will go to Explore, and so
Okay.
and
What was the previous? It was Northlands, so it's similar though, right? But there's some bonuses. Like you're saying, the ticket revenue will go to Explorer, but
yeah, so
previously
food and
they-
beverage obviously will stay with the Oilers,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
then ticket revenue will go to Explore, and
What about merchandise?
and then you know merchandise is all part of it's all part of
Jeff Robson official coffee mug.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm going to get my own Jeff Robson beer.
Yeah. We know people that make beer.
Clearly you do. Yeah, no, I mean, those are all things that we've talked about. And I think, you know, it's, merchandise is always one of those things that there's people that do it really well. Like I think Cowboy Shit does it really well.
Storm does it really well. I just sell it.
And then there's people that don't do merch well, and so I think we're somewhere in the middle of that, and so how do we ratchet that up a notch? And certainly something we've been talking about in terms of how do we make that better. And so yeah, no, I'm excited about how that's going to unfold, and yeah.
So it's essentially like your revenue streams, though, are sponsorship, ticket sales, and merchandise is kind of like the potential revenue streams for CFR in this new agreement. And it's probably what it previously was in Red Deer, similar. Like it's a similar thing. For the CPRA, it's the host fee. So that's that piece. But otherwise, like it's Explore Edmonton on they got those three pieces. And then you had mentioned maybe some bonus pieces on different levels of sales and what could go back to different portions. That we kind of already covered that a little bit.
Yeah, so we built some tiering into, you know, depending on how many tickets are sold.
Is that a number or a revenue?
It's a number. It's a number of people in the building.
Okay.
And then,
Not giveaways, like actual paid tickets.
yeah, paid tickets.
Yeah.
You know, whether they come or whether they don't come is irrelevant. But I think the interesting part of that is, you know, we tried to set that so in a way that I think the bar isn't so high that we couldn't achieve some of those bonuses, and I think that's where the bonuses. So the bonuses is on ticket sales, and then also the bonuses are on sponsorships. So, you know,
Which is all taken on by Explorer or partially CPRA, or what does that look like?
well, I mean, if you think about it, if we're paid on
bonuses, you're going to put some
bonuses,
money
we're
into
going to want to be
Put some effort
bringing in
into it.
sponsorship,
Yeah.
right? So,
yeah.
It's a eat what you kill kind of scenario.
well,
Yeah.
and it doesn't matter whether they sign them or we sign them. It still contributes
Same
to the
difference.
pot, and so
Yeah.
anything over a certain number, we're going to share in that. So,
Okay.
and so I think that's also interesting. So, you know, there's lots of things we can do with that. Like I said, the board will have to make a decision on how do they deal with that. But you know, it could be back to prize money to CFR. It could be to really bolster some new events like
Canadian champion bonuses, maybe.
Could
Maybe
be,
you get a truck again. I don't know.
well, that'd be nice if we got that back. But
That'd be cool, right?
but I think there's other things too that, you know, you think about our tour finale, you know, it's a 1 day, one shot thing. And, you know, for a few $1,000s, you know, wouldn't that be cool if we could have a 2 day or 3 day event and somebody could make at the end of the season, somebody could qualify for that and make, you know, 10 or 15,000.
Look what the PRCA did with that Governor's Cup. It was a pretty.
Yeah, pretty
that was a
major
pretty big
event.
splash. I mean, that's another level. But would like something like
but
that. Right?
but still not something that we couldn't pull off,
Yeah.
right? And
maybe in a Red Deer.
Lethbridge is looking pretty good on the timing for that now, because I'm assuming we didn't talk about this specifically, but the last rodeo of the year is probably going to be in Armstrong now, because you're not going to have enough time to get Hannah done the week before. No offense, unfortunately on the Hannah side of things, and like those later in the year rodeos, but those aren't going to be for the same season anymore.
Yeah, they'll count for world standing still. So
and 2020, like the
they could
standings,
move into the next year, but we haven't really figured out the last date of the cutoff in terms of like what rodeos would count, what wouldn't.
So you could go long weekend or maybe a weekend beyond that.
Yeah, you could go maybe a weekend beyond that, and
it's been pretty tight.
Because there's really nothing after the long weekend, really.
In September. Well, there's like the Medicine Lodge, Hannah used to be, and then there's
Hannah's like the last weekend of September.
Yeah, which was Edmonton, which that
you mean
rodeo,
the weekend after the long weekend? Yeah. There traditionally hasn't been much.
Not much. Yeah.
That, like September 10th, 11th weekend.
So there's opportunities and possibilities around. Could we host? Could you use some of that money to host? A really cool event and reward some of our tour contestants that have got to those tour events, and maybe they and really give them a big shot in the arm, or it could be somebody that we could revive grassroots. I still think the grassroots thing was
that was a fun concept.
It was a fun concept, and if we could add in all of a sudden some bigger dollars into this, like that could also all of a sudden take all those littler rodeos and create a whole big buzz around them, right? Yeah. So I think there could be lots of reasons to really.
So the financial spin-off from the CFR's success could really go out into these smaller rodeos and or the end of the year, whatever that finale looks like. So it's not all just about the CFR. It's about
the possibilities are endless, right? And it's still giving money, still getting money back into our contestants' hands, and still figuring out how to navigate those waters. And I think there's, like you said, if you sit back and just think about all the cool things you could do with some money, I think there's a lot of things we could do with it.
I know a couple times. Sorry, Ted. Well, I know a couple times we've talked about. We were looking back at the numbers, the attendance numbers in Edmonton, and then what it looked like in Red Deer. Obviously, a much smaller building. I'm sure in their bid they've proposed proposals on what expectations might be. Is there a bit of a number on the average on what they hope or what they'd like to see for the number of fans in at these performances over the course of those 5 performances? Is there a number like?
Can I make a guess? Can we make some guesses again?
Like we were looking at numbers of like 90,000 fans in Northland.
I think the most was about 95,000.
Is there a drop count number where it's like we really got to hit X amount to make this
60,000? That's my guess.
No, I don't think we've looked at it from that side. I think there's some really interesting support coming for the event, and these revenue opportunities will be icing on the cake, right? And so I think obviously we're going to have a big fan push because we want people in the building and we want people in there, and obviously OEG is going to have a vested interest in that because they're going to get parking, they're going to get food and beverage. They want
those.
They're going to
want those per cap numbers.
They're going to want their per caps to be up high. See, I even know those. What you're talking about? That's how long I've been around this business. They're like, and I think one of the things too that people don't remember is like when we started in Red Deer, our per cap numbers were like sub $20.
Wow.
And now our per cap numbers are like almost $40.
That's huge.
Like they've doubled.
So for those that might not know what a per cap is, does somebody want to give us?
Yeah, Dustin, you want to give us a
definition? Quick?
So that is the average spend per body in the building that night. So if you have 10,000 people in and your per cap's $20 times 20 times 10,000 people.
So 200,000.
Yeah.
Is that right?
Yeah. Yep.
200,000 in food and beverage.
Very well done, Ted.
Yeah.
Is that right?
Well done.
So
I want to fix my numbers.
So for example,
my calculator out.
I can't reveal top secret information, but when you look at some big concerts that come through, like you can see per caps on like food and beverage and merchandise. Like merchandise alone can be 50, 60. Food and beverage
per person
on average.
Oh my God.
If you get a drinking crowd, like say it's a big
national
big artist right now. Well, maybe it's more like a big time artist rolling through town.
Maybe like Megan or Morgan Wallen, maybe.
Right?
Or
like they're talking, you can be $50, $60 per person on the average spend of every person that comes through the door.
Dang.
So it's so that's the numbers we're talking about. Those are important when you're an OEG.
for sure. Yeah, because those numbers don't really matter to them.
Sorry. We're nerding out on our our business of sports.
Look at us
here.
go! Look at us go!
But going back to the like a different way to look at that though is the average ticket price, your ATP. And so you mentioned you went back to the.
He's using acronyms now.
I had to get one in there too. But the average ticket price, Dustin, you asked the question about ticket prices, and I think this is just like a little bit of a theory, but I think the average ticket price could go down like relatively decently because you have far more you have a way bigger inventory. You don't have to get as much money for those tickets in Edmonton because you have way bigger inventory. You're not only selling 7,000 tickets, you got 17,000 in inventory, so you can sell way more tickets for a little bit less. Like if you want to go spend $40 a seat to go to the CFR now, you probably can in Edmonton in 2024 because there's probably an available ticket that's that at that price. Possibly, I'm just speculating.
Well, we can nerd out on some even some more bigger numbers, but
Yeah.
like if you look at the per cap numbers, would go to OEG, and then if you look at the ticket pricing, would go to the revenue for us and Explore.
Yeah.
So, I think we have to be mindful also of
How much a beer costs in Rogers now?
Well, I mean, that's not our issue. Our issue is getting people in
Kind
the
of, though,
building
it is.
because we want people to come and enjoy the show.
Yeah, but
No.
you don't want to.
Are they drinking 20 beers? Probably not, but
Yeah, but
'Cause
they
that-
because they could just go walk across the street to the J-Dub and they don't got to drive.
Yeah, nerding out, your drop count, that is doesn't matter how many tickets you sell. The amount of people that come through is important because that's where your per caps grow and that's where you get people, right?
But
like
you're
I
not
look
gonna
at
just
last
give away
year.
tickets.
I look at
You're-
last year in Red Deer, for that first perf, there might have been X amount of tickets sold. You have a snowstorm come through. I'm
Everybody's going home
guessing
anyway.
60 or 70% of the tickets got scanned in for the first two performances. Is my
yeah,
guess,
probably.
right?
I didn't look at the
So
actual
what
stats.
that does to your per caps and your bottom line, it's super impactful, right? So you need those bodies coming in, buying the tickets, and being at those performances.
And buying beers.
Yeah.
And T-shirts.
We're a bunch of sports business nerds sitting here.
Um.
Who would have thought three rodeo guys would sit around a couch and
Yeah.
use the words per cap and ATPs? And
Oh, geez. What else do we got to talk about?
I want to ask in all this, and I know Ted said the why, but in this whole process, what has been the highlight of it, or what's been the most rewarding part of this
Good
whole
question.
deal and experience and getting this across the line?
I think
Or has it not happened yet?
2017 was an extremely humbling time. I think for us as an organization and for me, being involved in this personally, when, we rallied to get, a CFR. So we had 2 1-year deals. I don't know if anybody even remembers this, but we had 2 1-year deals to kind of cap off our time there. And that would have been 2017 and 2018.
In Northlands at Roxall,
Northlands.
which like the CFR was the last event ever in that building.
Yeah. So 2017 was the last year. So we had 2 1-year deals, and they were all, the second 1-year deal was totally based on whether we could actually do it or not. I mean, whether, because Rogers would open or whatever, so we didn't really know.
Because
And
the last year the CFR was the last 2
2017.
years,
2017 was the last one in,
and the Oilers were playing in Rogers then, right?
yeah.
There was no hockey being played in there yet.
Yeah.
Correct.
And so I think it was a humbling experience going, without sugarcoating, holy shit, where do we go now? Like, what happens next?
Because this year, 2023, there's already a 2024 finals. At the end of 2017, there was no deal in place. It was homeless for a while there, and there's no goal
Yeah. So
line.
I think to your question about, what was special about this time around was, we get to work with 3 unbelievable communities on, working on tenders from each of them that were all passionate, super excited about trying to have us there. So that's that made the whole process so rewarding because you're like this is different, and to have options and to be able to present our board with options was something that I say is like you couldn't ask for something better, right? I mean, to have options was awesome, and then to know that what we thought all along, or what I at least thought in the back of my mind, was if we had to leave Edmonton way back, do we have options and where does that go? And then I think the other rewarding piece of that was I think we proved to the world that we could have an event, a successful event in a smaller venue. And there was so much skepticism when we announced we're going to Red Deer. There was people going, "Oh my goodness, these guys have fallen on their face," and we didn't fall on their face. Like, we had 5 very successful, or 4, and we were about to have our 5th very successful CFR in Red Deer, and yeah, and just how it's grown and how it's going. So the process itself was so rewarding, and to see that and to be a part of that, and then everywhere you went, have somebody excited to see you, know that you're representing the CPRA in a really positive light, and like that's just super rewarding.
Well, it's kind of come full circle, because I think of 2017. I remember people out in the arena getting Ziploc bags of the dirt. Like, yeah, in Northlands, because the last dirt from the CFR that's been there 44 years. And then you're part of the planning on the new building for if there's a rodeo there, it doesn't happen. And
that was before that. Even
before all
too.
that, right? And then now to know that in 2024, you're going to get to walk in on Wednesday night in 2024 in October, and there's going to be a CFR performance in Rogers. It's got to be some jubilation for you there.
Yeah, no, I'm pretty happy about it. And like, people ask why, like, why do you do what you do? Well, that's why. And there's a mason jar that was collected of dirt in Northlands, and that same mason, I don't know if you remember the very first opening in Red Deer when we went there, but I was the guy that walked through that center gate and threw out that same mason jar of dirt back into the arena in Red Deer.
Yeah, I think I do remember that. Yeah.
And that was a pretty interesting moment when, and the funniest thing, I mean, it's a funny story. You think about funny stories now, right? But when we collected that, when they went through and collected that dirt in Edmonton, I remember Mike says, the camera guy, he's like, "Hey, do you remember what you were wearing?" I'm like, "No." Because you got to wear the same thing on the Wednesday night. And I'm like, I remember it was a blue blazer and like whatever. And so he sends me pictures from the video so that I could bring back the same outfit and do it on the Wednesday night. That was like, I think that was the funniest.
This guy's been walking around with a jar of dirt for
a year
in the same clothes, just ready to pour
Just
them
lost.
Here's Robson. He's almost homeless. Like, he's been carrying around this mason jar forever.
He's got a mason jar named Wilson.
Yeah.
Oh,
That's a cool story.
That was a funny story.
I mean, Jeff, you've been a wealth of information on this exciting announcement. I think that it's crazy that we're back here again, back in Edmonton.
Oh, I thought you mean just on the podcast.
Well, I mean, you
That's
are
not
the
crazy.
leader in appearances.
I mean, this
now.
is my first time with you, so
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, I think that it's crazy that it's cycled through 5 years of Red Deer, but I think you've alluded to it a number of times that Red Deer did a good job, and you just said it a few moments ago. It's exciting to go big, and it's exciting to go big, but it is hard to go to a smaller venue in a community that didn't have all the accommodations and the facilities. Like, you guys did a good job, and I think you can't take anything away from how good Red Deer was. I've really thoroughly enjoyed Red Deer, but it's always exciting to see where things can go and grow. And we tip our hat to you for all the work you've done, or else we wouldn't have a job every November if it wasn't for the work you've done. So
Yeah, thank you, Jeff.
Appreciate it.
Thanks for doing this.
Yeah, no problem.
Thanks for putting the effort out to make sure that that rodeo has a home and a home for the finals in Canada, because it's the marquee event of the year, and you've, like, I don't want to say single-handedly, because there's a huge group of people that have been part of it, but
Totally.
you've been a pretty major driving force in the last
Yeah,
decade.
I think you can't underestimate the team at the CPRA too. Like, Patty Auger has been a great addition to our team. When she came on, and she's been so much help when I was at the GM, and then you have like obviously Danny and Tanner and guys like Keenan that have been a big part of it, and you guys that have taken a role in the event, and it's been good to see it kind of come around and see where it's going, and be excited to see what opening night looks like in Rogers.
I can tell you what it's going to look like. You ready for this? I'm going to paint you a picture.
I'm gonna have a blue blazer.
The gate opens. Yeah, there's a blue
blazer with a white pinstripe
He's got
shirt.
a big long beard from this journey up Highway 2 with this
My
jar of
backpack
dirt.
on, my dreadlocks.
Oh,
Yeah.
jeez.
Yeah. And you got a face painted on the jar.
Yeah. Oh, man.
Cool.
Okay, well, thanks, though, Jeff. This is awesome. Thanks for having the chat.
Having me, and yeah.
CFR50, October 2nd to 5th in Edmonton, Rogers Place. But before that, CFR49, November 1st to 5th in Red Deer, Alberta. Tickets, cfrreddeer.ca. Make sure to come out and support the last CFR in Red Deer for the time being.
And if you can't be there in person,
check
it out on the Cowboy Channel.
Join us on the Cowboy Channel.
Join us on the Cowboy Channel.
And by us, he means himself.
And Dave and Katie.
It'd be nice to have Katie home.
Yeah, it's going to be great to be working with her. We're excited. It's going to be fun. It's like a little reunion.
Yeah, it's so awesome.
Well, thanks, everybody, for listening. This has been episode 155 of Cowboy Shit. My name's Ted Stoven. He's Dustin Edwards. And our guest today, Jeff Robson. Thanks again for being here as part of the big announcement. Special edition. Thanks for tuning in, everybody. All right.
There's a young man flying high today from the airport in Seattle. Cowboy hat up atop his head with a suitcase and a saddle. He wears a steely-eyed grin clear across his face, 'cause he's wilder than 1880. And if rodeo's his one true love, then bronc riding's his lady. He's as tough as old Jim Shoulders, Casey Tibbs reincarnate. Sets his feet just like Dan Mortensen did back in 98. Today he's flying south to ride at the State Fair of New Mexico. He was built to ride the buckers, he was born to rodeo. And the lights of old Las Vegas are sure gonna see a lot of him. Like a wildfire, he'll burn the house to the ground. He's lived a life of pleasure and pain, all coming down to measuring rain. And he's here to win everything that's not nailed down. With an addiction to the climb and laying it all out on the line. He's living his life 8 seconds at a time.